you all know, Balloon Fiesta started here back in April of 1972. And, a lot of people have been because we're the birthplace of the Balloon Fiesta, people have asked, well, where was it at? And as it relates to the mall now. And actually, for those people that perhaps don't remember, but back in 1972, all we had this was an open air center. And we had Rhodes Department Store, that's a blast from the past, Rhodes Department Store. Of course, Sears used to be here. And then we used to have about 40 other small shops, kind of right where the two-level portion starts. This was the outdoor mall. In fact, if you guys remember, right here where we're sitting was the Sears fountain. The fountain that kids always threw little detergent tablets in, and it was just a big bubble bath for everybody for many, many years. But the dirt lot that back in 1972 is kind of where the two-level portion of the mall was. And their fun fact is that people always asked, well, why didn't it continue? If this was the start, the birthplace, why didn't it continue? Well, it just so happened the next year, the developer, the owner of Coronado Center, announced an expansion and this new thing called an enclosed mall with climate-controlled environment. And it was kind of the new thing, right? Downtown was still jamming, and so we started excavating, and it took a few years, and we opened in February 1976, what you see now, the enclosed portion of the mall. People, of course, we all know it started off with KKOB, 50th anniversary, 50 years. So I guess that was like 1922. Give it up to Cumulus. Of course, growing up, all we had was AM stations, right? There was no FM stations. I think KRST was for a little bit, but having that event here, and who would have thought coming down the road, and I think a lot of people during the course of time is, it's like, what impact does the Balloon Fiesta have on a large retail establishment like Coronado Center? Well, truth be told, we all wish for beautiful weather, flying in the morning, no rain, no wind, and then even in the evenings. But, Mother Nature just really doesn't, cooperate that much sometimes. But I could tell you, when the weather's nasty, the mall is jamming. It is rockin', packed. It's very, but it goes back to that climate-controlled environment. When we decided, no, we can't have it here anymore in 1973, we're going to be building this climate-controlled environment. But anyway, those are just a few fun facts that I thought I'd share with you.
We're here to celebrate 50 years of Balloon Fiesta. So as we started looking at this, Kim Vesley, and actually with my eyesight, I can't see you. I know you're out here somewhere because I saw you earlier. Oh, now I can see you. She put together a 280-page program. I think I had law books that were shorter than those, but anyway, she's put that together, and as we did some of the research, we realized what we had come from, what we had back in 1972, and we got some of that stuff. We have talked about the pilots, and we know some of the pilot stories, and we'll talk about them in just a minute, but realistically what started Balloon Fiesta, if you think about it, Dick McKee from KOB Radio approached Sid Cutter and Don Draper with the idea of having a balloon fly because Sid had a balloon that he had been flying his brother stole the balloon from what I understand. He had Betsy Ross for a centerpiece for their mother's birthday party the year earlier. Bill took it to Phoenix and Sid got the Roadrunner balloon, and it was owned by Quad A, which is a local balloon club. Thank you, I think. Anyway, Don Draper was the first president of Quad A, and so Dick McKee talked to Sid and Don about flying the balloon. They talked a little bit more and came up with the idea of having a balloon race. From what I've been told, there was nobody had any idea what a balloon race was, so they kind of winged it. And actually, that was the first one, and now we're here today. The one thing that I hope my board of directors didn't pay attention to in those programs, Apparently, Dick McKee approached Don and Sid 2 weeks before the first balloon fiesta, and they put it together. It takes my staff and me a little bit more than a year to put on a balloon fiesta, so I guess we're just not as good as they were. Anyway, I would like to thank some of those original people that we've talked about. First, the original pilots that are here today. Gene Dennis is here with his wife, Jan. Denny Floden, AKA Captain Fogg. And you can tell the rest of the entourage, his son Eric and his family are all here with him as well. And also, I forgot to mention Gene's, I did mention his wife, but his son is with him as well here this morning. And Carter Tweets is the third pilot, and his wife Peggy. Wilma Picard is the fourth remaining pilot from the original 13. She wasn't able to travel with us today, but she has sent her wishes and greetings through the Whitaker family. Anyway, talking about the rest of the original 13s, well, I guess I have to start with Sid Cutter, being represented by Jewel Cutter and the grandkids. And Jewel's over here, there we go. I'm gonna do it. Jewel gets really angry whenever we refer to her as the First Lady of Balloon Fiesta, but she is the First Lady of Balloon Fiesta. Okay, Bill Cutter, and he is represented by his daughter, Kay. Oh, okay. Oscar Kratz is represented by his children, Dave, Cindy, and Dion. I'll go there. And Carl Stephan is represented by his son, Carl Stephan Jr. And I hesitate bringing up the next one because they're just loud, you know. Matt Whitaker is represented by his wife, Bobby, daughters Donna and Denise, and a few hundred of their closest friends. Okay, you guys should have gotten a name badge today which reflected one of the original 13. Those are the families, or those are the original 13 have families or are here themselves, but to recognize the other 13, the first one is Don Kirsten, Bill Murtorf, Don Picard, Brent Stockwell, and that's it for the original 13. Can we have a round of applause for what they did? Okay, the next I would like to recognize, because the pilots, as a pilot, I don't think we get enough recognition, but as an organizer, I think pilots get too much recognition. You know, they're the show. You know, they keep telling us that. But anyway, going back to that original triumvirate that started talking about balloons back in 1972, Dick McKee was the general manager of KOB radio. They could only afford one K back then. Now they're KKOB. And so I would like to recognize his participation at the beginning and his importance, and he is represented by his sons, well, his children, Steve McKee, Chris McKee, and Terry Lonis. And then the third member of the triumvirate, Don Draper, is represented by Mike Draper and his family. Oh, over here. Sorry, he moved on me. I saw where he was earlier. Okay, that's pretty much it on as far, well, I'm sorry, there are a couple other people we definitely need to talk about. A lot of people have always thought Tom Rutherford was involved in ballooning from the beginning, and he actually was. But he actually wore two hats. He was actually working for KOB Radio at the time, and he was liaison with Sid, from what I understand. So anyway, Tom was there at the beginning. Tom became one of the partners of World Balloon Championships the next year, and was around Balloon Fiesta for years and years and years and years. And in fact, even back when I started, he was around and was still the voice of Balloon Fiesta back then. So anyway, I'd like to recognize his son and brother, Jeremy Rutherford and Jim Rutherford. And then one last person I would like to recognize is, again, if you remember the balloon that Sid flew in the flight, the Roadrunner Coyote, was actually called the Roadrunner balloon, and it was owned by Quad A, which was a local balloon club. In addition to Don Draper, who was the president at the time, there was a gentleman named Jim Doolittle, and he is represented now by his daughter Annette. Is she here? Okay, he's not represented by her, but he is in spirit. Okay. Okay. Who am I supposed to do? Oh, I'm sorry. I, of course, am still taking directions from the First Lady of Balloon Fiesta. Dick Brown is the gentleman. You should have gotten a program as you came in. If you notice the cover, that is actually a replica of the first cover back in 1972. And if you want to buy a program at the field today, it's not going to be 25 cents, just so you know. But actually, Dick Brown is a contributor and heritage committee person, and has basically written probably a big chunk of all the articles you've ever seen in the program. And in particular, this year during the program, he wrote a story about the original 13, and we've reprinted that, and that's what this program is here. And if you notice inside, we have a quote from the original program where they talk about what Balloon Fiesta might become. In fact, they didn't even know it was Balloon Fiesta back then. They talked about a fiesta of sorts. But anyway, I'm also getting the hook over here. I know I'm supposed to be leaving. Is there anything else, Jewel? Okay.
I feel like I'm standing here with the pillars of Balloon Fiesta, the people who started it and more or less have held it up. My first thing I want to do, though, is I want to recognize my fellow board of directors. And would you please stand, board of directors, please? Thank you. These gentlemen and ladies meet all year long and do all the planning, and well, not the planning, but I guess the execution or whatever. And they do a great job, and it's a lot of time and effort that they put into it. One of the things I'd like to do also is thank Randy Sanchez for all your efforts and everything that you've done for us. I know you've already been up here, but stand up and take another lap around. Right on. Thank you, Randy. You know, I always look back at Fiesta and I look at the history, and, you know, probably when I look at history, I look at people like Tom McConnell and John Davis. You know, these guys have been around since God was a corporal. And one of the things that we often forget when people leave the board or people leave Fiesta is we seem not to remember them. And my feeling is that it is great for us to remember the history of Balloon Fiesta, but most of all, it's better to remember the people who got us here instead of forgetting them when they're gone. So like I said, as far as I'm concerned, the original 13, I want to classify as pillars of the Balloon Fiesta. The people that held us up, started us off. And so from here on in, I'd like to call them the pillars of Balloon Fiesta. And I thank you all very much for what you did many, many years ago. You know, they wanted me to give me a personal reflection of the early balloon fiestas. Well, at that time, I was a young police officer, and I didn't get much sleep as it was because I worked graveyard. And so my wife and my children would go to the fiesta every year, and my wife was reflecting to me just this morning about the fact of how much she enjoyed the first one she ever went to, which was at the state fairgrounds. And when she went to the state fairgrounds, she met the first balloonists, and they were cooking hot dogs on their burners. So she found that very much fun, and of course my oldest son was only about a year and a half old when that happened. So that was her reflection. The only time I remember the balloon fiesta was, you know, for different things that happened in my family. You know, the birth of my second son, we had to go through the streets of Albuquerque that were icy, and it was the second balloon fiesta that we had, I think it was the second or third one at the state fairgrounds. And it was my son, Kenneth, was born. So that's how I kind of recognized the years and what we did in Balloon Fiesta. So anyways, I don't want to stand up here and talk all day. That's what I'm famous for, I guess. I get too wordy at times. When I used to submit reports to Paul, he says, Al, you're too wordy. So I don't want to get too wordy with everybody, but I want to thank everybody that came today. And I especially want to thank Jewel, who's been around for a long, long time. And thank you, Jewel, for everything that you've done for Balloon Fiesta. I appreciate it as well. And I miss Sid as much as you do. I can't miss as much as you do, but I miss him a great deal. So anyways, with that, I'm going to end my little talk, and I'm going to turn it back over to Paul. Thank you very much.
Again, one of the stories I heard, again, I was a kid back in the old days, and no one believes that anymore. But anyway, the Balloon Fiesta has had a long history with Albuquerque mayors. The story that I did hear from Sid a long time ago is after running the Balloon Fiesta for a few years, he had, in his words, all the fun he could afford. So he didn't want to give it up. He approached Mayor Harry Kenny at that time to see if the city would like to be involved. And Mayor Kenny picked up the mantle and kind of ran with it from that for a little while. And then the actual Balloon Fiesta nonprofit corporation was formed. But anyway, we have continued that tradition with our mayors. We have one now, Mayor Tim Keller, who is very involved with Balloon Fiesta. I'm sure he'll tell you the story of how his first time at Balloon Fiesta riding around on his bike trying to chase the balloons. We have better chase vehicles now, but that will still work. But anyway, it's nice to have a mayor that is so engaged in the community and with Balloon Fiesta. The city has been in Fiesta mode just like we have for the last month or two. And one of the things there's actually been 3 major projects they've done at the park this year. There is the on-ramp to southbound I-25, which will help people get off the field. I think that's one of the big things. There's also a traffic signal at Horizon and Alameda, which helps with some of our parking. And they've actually created a new 500 parking spot parking lot at Balloon Fiesta Park as well. But anyway, it just shows the commitment of the city to the Balloon Fiesta and their assistance. And I'd like to welcome, it's my honor to welcome and introduce Mayor Tim Keller.
It is wonderful to see the original founders of Balloon Fiesta. And I just want to share a few brief words with you. And I was thinking about this in the back as I was enjoying, by the way, an excellent breakfast. Those bacon cups of eggs. You can't go wrong with that. It's a very Balloon Fiesta breakfast. You know, I think I would just start with, and I know this it's a loud mic, so I'm going to keep it pretty far away from me. You know, for me, I mean, not to talk about age, but the Balloon Fiesta is older than me. So Yes, I am a product of everything that you started. And I want to, I think, begin by just reflecting of what it's like. I said good morning to my kids this morning when I woke up. They were already up. And then I thought of coming here and what it's like to grow up as a child in a city with the Fiesta that all of you started. And I have to tell you, something that's lost, I think, in many ways lost on me because of the honor and the gratitude that I have from growing up here. It's like growing up in no other city because of the Balloon Fiesta. We have a couple of unique things about our city. There's our history and our culture and our landscape. We know that. But then you add on top of that the Balloon Fiesta that you all started. And it means that all of us get to wake up as children and we drive to school in the morning and we look up at the sky and we see all of those balloons. And we get to do that every single year. And frankly, because of all the practicing, multiple days a year, right? We all know this is a whole thing in the fall and in the winter. And that is something truly special. It's something that I actually take for granted. I didn't really realize that, how special that is, till I came here this morning. And I realized too that, as was mentioned, everyone in this town also chases balloons. This is like part of growing up in Albuquerque, is you're either on your bicycle or on foot, like chasing some balloon around your neighborhood. And that is a memory that no other children have, right? Pretty much in the entire world. Only here in Albuquerque do you grow up with those memories. And for me, it was even more powerful. Later on in high school, I got involved with a chase crew, sort of the second generation of many of you here. This is the Buffalo Chip chapter, as they're called, of Balloon Fiesta with the Sunflyer. And for me, then I got a whole other experience with respect to actually being on a chase crew and so forth. And now as your mayor, someone who is really just a beneficiary of everything that you started. So I share those stories with you most of all to say thank you so much. I don't know if any of you actually had any idea what would become of what you started. And I find it hard to believe that you'd think we'd have the largest balloon fiesta in the world and it'd be our Super Bowl for 9 days. But maybe you did. That would be some amazing vision. But either way, we are so grateful in the city to have the Balloon Fiesta. And also as your mayor, but as a child who grew up here, I am grateful for all that you gave me and all that you have given the city for the last 50 years. So with that, actually, what I want to do is pretty much officially declare Balloon Fiesta Week. And so a wonderful tradition that every mayor has done, I think, before me, is that we have an official proclamation here. And so I think some of you have seen this, but it's on our city letterhead is the picture of old Albuquerque when it started, which is, just a couple of adobe buildings. But it is my tremendous honor on this 50th anniversary to again say thank you to everyone who started this, and to also remind everyone of the power of community and the power of an idea, and what happens when those two things come together. You might get something incredible for 50 years, like the International Balloon Fiesta. And so with that, therefore, as mayor, I, Tim Keller, declare that today, on September 30th through October 9th, 2022 is the 50th anniversary Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta. Thank you so much and congratulations.
All right, I was just getting an update outside. Pilot briefing is concluded and the balloons are laying out and they know that we are having a program here, so this is great. I'd like to ask the participants whom I've already talked to please make their way up here to the stage and get your seat. April 8th, 1972 was a day that just didn't happen. It was an event to celebrate KOB's 50th anniversary. And the event actually triggered an inertia of flight that created its own shape as unique as the mass ascensions and balloon glows, words that really did not exist when you think about it 50 years ago. And today we are going to celebrate those who made this event possible. We celebrate the names, the families, and their legacies, and today we'll hear from families of the organizer. The first person we want to be able to hear from today is we'd like to honor Dick McKee, the general manager of KOB, the person who collaborated with Sid Cutter for a 50th birthday party for the radio and TV station. Dick McKee's family is represented today, as we've heard, by Chris McKee, Terry Lonis, and Steve McKee. Michael McKee is not able to join us today. So with that, I would like to invite Mr. Steve McKee up to the microphone.
Thanks, Tom, and thanks everybody for being here. What a special day. How do you celebrate the 50th anniversary of something so unique and special as Balloon Fiesta? We're doing it. But it's kind of ironic that that was the question my father, Dick McKee, was faced with 50 years ago as the general manager of KOB Radio, the 50,000 watt voice of the Great Southwest. Anybody remember that? Tom Dunn in the mornings. Fortunately, my dad was the most creative person I've ever known. Some of you who have some gray hair might remember he actually put a billboard up on I-25 with a swing and a swinger, which got a lot of attention and would be totally illegal today. So, Mayor, we're not going to do that. Following his tenure at KOB, he went over to KRKE radio at that time and saw where FM radio was going and pioneered 94 Rock. And the thing I remember about 94 Rock is the names on the bathrooms were Elton and Olivia. Okay, so that's just the way he thought. He was very creative. But this was before all that. Dad's challenge was to figure out something KOB could do that would honor the station's legacy, make the community proud, and really just bring a smile to people's faces. What better way to do that than with a balloon or balloons? So as Paul mentioned, Sid Cutter agreed to have his balloon as part of the festivities, and as they were planning the event, my dad asked what the largest gathering of balloons to that point had ever been, and apparently the number was 19. So they decided to top it. They were going to top that number. And Sid, I understand, actually got 21 commitments for that first Fiesta. Unfortunately, only 13 balloons made it there on time, but to 8-year-old me, that didn't matter. What I saw was magical. I'd never seen anything like it in all my 8 years. But neither had anybody else. Nobody had ever seen a gathering of balloons like this, so it was very special. Well, the first time you do anything, it's not known as the first annual, it's known as the one and only. And I think everybody there agreed that this one and only must not be a one and done. And so we had to press on. And the rest, as they say, is history. We're all here today. A New Mexico tradition was born. So let me just say I'm delighted to be here representing my father. I'm delighted that my siblings, Chris and Terry, and their families can be here. I'm delighted that a third and fourth generations of McKees are here. And let me just point out that that little angel over there named Margot Rose McKee is about to get her first taste of what her great-grandfather envisioned 50 years ago. And I know how pleased and proud he would be to see the smile on her face and all of ours. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Continuing our conversation is Jeremy Rutherford. Jeremy's father, Tom Rutherford, is a force of nature with a voice of God. Tom worked with Dick McKee, and he just, everybody can agree that Tom just knew everyone. And so, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Jeremy Rutherford.
Thank you. I can't tell you how honored I am that they asked me to speak a little bit this morning. I would like to say I remember a lot, but I was only 3.5 at the time. I am truly sorry that neither of my parents can be here for this. They gave their all for Fiesta for as long as they possibly could. I know Tom would really be beaming at this turnout and the idea of doing this recreation. It's a wonderful idea. I want to remember how lucky we were that first day. Excuse me. If the weather hadn't been good, if more pilots hadn't been able to make it, if nobody had showed up to what was essentially a mystery event, honoring a beloved radio station, but still nobody had any idea what this was, this could have been a one-off or a never-off, and who knows where we'd be today. This has just turned into one of the most amazing things in the entire world. It's been great for Albuquerque, great for New Mexico. And I'm really honored to be part of a family that was a big part of that. So thank you all for being here, and have a great Fiesta.
Our next speaker is Mike Draper. Mike Draper will answer the age-old question of how do you get 20% of all known balloons in the world to come to Albuquerque to fly. So, of that and many other things, let's welcome Mr. Draper.
Thank you. In 1971, Nancy Cutter gave Sid Cutter, or Sid Cutter gave Nancy Cutter a balloon for Christmas. I've heard this story both ways. I don't know which was which, but I do know that Sid decided to use it as a centerpiece for the annual New Year's party at Cutter Hangar. So when we went in for the 1971 party at Cutter Aviation, here was a hot air balloon. As the New Year party continued through the night, Sid told everybody about how his license contained aerostat. Of course, we're celebrating all night long. And as the sun came over the mountain, the balloon went from inside Cutter Hangar, which at the time was located where the main airport is, to outside the hangar. Up in the air it went with Sid. Now, as every balloonist here can tell you, a balloon only goes as far as the wind will blow you. Well, the wind didn't blow very hard that day, and the journey wasn't very long because it just made it over the main runway of the airport. Well, we ended that flight with a conversation with FAA, who at the time decided that although a balloon was an airworthy vehicle, it may not be the proper place to launch it was from the airport. The club was then formed. Sid rounded up Don Draper, my father, and I have to read these so I can remember them. The original 10. I hate to say this, or maybe I should be proud to say it, but I'm one of the original 10 balloonists. But it was Don Draper, Maxie Anderson, Eddie Perchek, Graham McNary, Jimmy Doolittle, Al Ratchner, Jesse Baxter, of course, Sid, and myself. The club was formed and we were off and flying. We would drive down Chavis Road down to where Maxie was developing some land, and that was our launch site. As we went down Chavis, all of a sudden this became a caravan, and you'd see car after car line up behind this C-10 pickup truck of Cutters as we went down to take off. Because everybody had learned is that we trained pilots in the morning, but after we got training, if the box continued and we continued to land there, that all the kids would then be able to get a flight in the balloon. Never had to ask if there was anybody that wanted to go up in the balloon. Sid informed us one February morning that Sue Barton wanted to talk to us. Sue Barton was a sales associate for KOB Radio. So as we had our monthly meeting, which was usually held in a barn, we changed the location to out at Sid's hangar, and Sue Barton came in and made a proposal. Seems like they were coming up on their 50th anniversary and wanted to have our balloon. And I must regress here and tell you that this is very early in the ballooning industry. The balloon in Albuquerque was number 57 in the United States. So this is very, very early in the hot air balloon industry there. So Sue came out and made her pitch, and Sid jumped up and said, yeah, we'll bring the balloon. And my dad, who was the president of the club, said, yeah, we'll bring the balloon. And Sid says, well, the original balloon, which had migrated over to Phoenix with Bill, well, we'll bring that balloon in. Seeing an opportunity here, I had watched a program. And on this program was this balloonist. And in my, okay, I'll hurry it up. In my estimation, he was the hottest balloonist in town. And it was on American Sportsman. And so I wanted to meet this balloonist. And so I suggested to the group that we make a rally out of it. And that's how it became a race. Because I wanted to meet your next speaker, Dennis Floden, or Captain Fogg. So Captain Fogg came with 19 other balloonists. We would have had 21 had we not had a snowstorm in Chicago. And that's how the balloon race began. And with that, I'll turn the mic over to my idol, Dennis Floden.
My first suggestion, you need to get a different idol. I think back, first of all, I'm lucky to, lucky to be able to think back that far now. This has been, when I first told people in Michigan I was going to go down to Albuquerque, they said, is that in the United States? Do you need a passport? And the answer was, of course, no, but I didn't know that for sure. I went and got a passport anyway, just in case. What this community has done with ballooning is an example of what ballooning in and of itself can do for a community as well. It brings people together. Pardon the pun, but it's very uplifting. And the people in Albuquerque have responded so graciously to every balloonist that I've ever talked to that has been here. Thank you seems hardly sufficient, but it's the best I can come up with. Thank you very much.
I want to continue what Dennis was talking about in terms of balloons. The fact that Albuquerque has put ballooning on the map, made Albuquerque is the balloon capital of certainly North America, if not the world. Give yourself a round of applause for that contribution to the world. Just one short comment. People have been asking me the last couple of weeks, what do you remember about the event? That was 50 years ago. That's hard to remember that far back. But the one thing I do remember is arriving in Albuquerque, getting up in the morning, and there was a brand new pickup truck with a balloon, my balloon on the back of it, sitting outside the hotel. Still had the sticker on the inside of the window of the pickup truck, where it was brand new. And we got in the pickup truck and drove for what seemed like hours. It was probably minutes, but it seemed like hours, out into the middle of nowhere. And all of a sudden we came across this big development called Coronado Center. And I couldn't figure out why anybody in the world would ever want to build a big shopping center out in the middle of the desert. Well, we backed our pickup truck up to the edge of the asphalt parking lot. Thankfully, somebody had given us a tarp or a cover that we could put over the dirt on the edge of the parking lot, and we inflated the balloon, took off. I don't know where we flew, but out someplace. And as we flew off, thousands of people were down in the parking lot cheering and waving, and this was really the start of something big. And not only that, when we landed, those people had beat us to the landing site, and we didn't even know where we were going to land, but they had beat us to the landing site, and they were there cheering and waving when we arrived at the landing site. This truly was the start of something really big here in Albuquerque. I want to thank you all for the opportunity of having been a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our final speaker today is one of the passengers. It's Denise McDonald. She was her father's precious cargo, my term, and she was her dad's passenger. So Denise?
Hi. I'm Matt Whitaker's daughter, who he passed away 3 years ago. We really, really miss him, especially here. But one thing that really stands out in my mind, the very first hot air balloon race was only in 1962 in the St. Paul Winter Carnival. I was 5, our family, of course. Dad had to go chase, and within 2 years he had formed a little club, and they bought a balloon. And to think that race, there were supposed to be 4 balloons. There ended up only being 3 that got airborne. And to think that just in 10 years' time, what exploded across the United States. And then we thought, I mean, when you think of 3 compared to 13, that's a huge percentage increase just in 10 years. So my dad actually officially, with my logbook, started to teach me to fly when I was 12. So I flew with him when I was 15 in the race. And so with 13 balloons, we actually thought we were number 1 for a long, long time until Wilma and Don Picard found the box. And Wilma came in, and now we were number 2. And then Don came in, and we were number 3, and that's where we ended up. So I know we're time crunched, so I'm just gonna leave it at that, and we should be able to get going.
Thank you very much, Denise. I also want to recognize Carter Tweet, who is joining us on the stage. Thank you very much for being here this morning. Well, I have some great news. The weather looks fantastic. The balloons are starting to inflate. And guess what? There are a few people outside. Albuquerque loves a good launch, and it looks like we're going to have that. Thank you all very much for being here today. Please make your way outside for this morning's ascension.